to the Metal Command Podcast.
Greetings, everybody, and welcome back to the Metal Command Podcast. Tony here with you. And again, as always, I do appreciate any support I do get for this podcast. So if you like what you see and hear, please, by all means, hit the subscribe button, hit that little bell to be notified anytime I post a video. And if you are following this show on any other form of social media, by all means, give me a like and a follow there. Today's show, a little bit of a roundtable discussion about Jon Schaffer from Iced Earth. And what is discussed is all about his situation at the January 6th protest. We talk about him as a musician a little bit. We actually started off with that. We talk about the consequences it had on the people he was in a band with and playing music with. And we also talk about how he can resurrect his music career and the obstacles he is probably going to face when doing that. I invited two really great people to have that discussion with me. I invited them for the specific purpose that they could have a civilized discussion about it, and the fact that they have been playing in bands for quite a while, know the music business really well, and have a lot of experience in it. And I thought that the two gentlemen that I invited on the show to talk about this with me, it would be a great roundtable discussion, and it really actually was. So with that being said, I will cut this up into smaller videos and into smaller sections, so that way it might be a little bit easier to follow. But this episode is kind of longer than I normally. It's longer than most of the interviews that I have, but I will be cutting it up into smaller videos as well, which will be up here on the podcast. But we do talk about the Jon Schaffer situation, and I personally think the guy deserves a second chance. That's where I stand on it, but we talk about it in more detail here. So with that said, here is the roundtable discussion about Jon Schaffer from Iced Earth. Check it out. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Metal Command Podcast. Tony here with you, and I'm joined by two guests today, and we are going to be talking about Jon Schaffer from Iced Earth, who, as many people know, was one of the people that received a pardon from President Trump that was there on the January 6th protest. And the two guys I have with me today, I have Justin Roth, who's been on my show a few times, and guitar player from War Curse. Justin has also been involved in doing road work for bands and managing some pretty big bands in the metal scene. He hosts a really cool podcast called Heavy Business, where they talk a lot just music industry stuff and give advice to bands and stuff like that. And then, of course, I also have Christian Wentz. Christian is a cybersecurity analyst, and he was on my artificial intelligence episode, which we'll probably revisit that at some point, and also played in Circle to Circle and did quite a bit of touring over time with that, and of course his band Future's End as well. So gentlemen, I am happy you are here because you two are probably two of the best people that I could have this discussion with, and we're going to talk about Jon Schaffer from Iced Earth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you guys really quick about him as a musician and any experiences. Maybe you've met him, maybe you haven't. I'll go into my own personal experiences that I've had with him. And, the first thing I'll ask is, you guys are both guitar players, both very good guitar players. I'll probably start with Justin. How would you evaluate him as a musician, as an actual guitar player? And have you ever met him or, hung out with him or anything like that?
Yeah. So, I think he's a great musician. And I have met him. I have played with him. We've played with Iced Earth. And it was kind of I guess you could call it a bad timing. I don't know. I hate to even say that because, and we'll get into that. But when the whole Jon Schaffer thing broke and when his face was slathered all over the TV, my profile picture at the time was from a recent show we had played with Iced Earth. And there I was like a dipshit, like a deer in the headlights, just standing in front of Iced Earth's backdrop because we didn't fly our backdrop that night. And the onslaught of hate that I got just for that alone was quite comical. But I have met Jon. He was very kind to us. Nice guy. Everybody in Iced Earth was really, really nice to us, really accommodating. I don't know him. I know people who do know him, rather well. I've never heard anybody say a bad thing about him until, the obvious. But he seemed like a pretty level-headed. I mean, I know it's funny to say that now, but yeah, he seemed like a pretty regular dude. He was pretty humble. He was cool. He was cordial. Yeah, I didn't have a bad thing in the world to say about the guy.
Christian.
Yeah, I actually I'm going to echo a lot of what it is that Justin just said. I have also played with him. I want to say it was Sweden Rock and on one of the cruises, I think Full Metal or the Vlachen one, or that was the Full Metal cruise. What's the other one? 70,000 tons. I can't remember which one it was, but again, I agree. He's actually a great guitar player. He also, you got to give him a lot of credit for a few things. First of all, he created a very unique sound. Iced Earth sounds like Iced Earth, and Matt Barlow was kind of their signature sound as far as vocals go, but it didn't matter who was singing for them. They still sound like Iced Earth, and that's something that's really tough to do. And secondly, he was able to, I think that what brought them brought him more success in the music business was it was a live album that they did in Greece. And he knew how to properly leverage that to really build a good business out of the Iced Earth brand. So I have a lot of respect for him as a musician and a songwriter, as well as a businessman. The dude knows what he's doing, and this is not an easy business to be in.
No.
So he was always good. He was nice to us too. Actually, he had some very nice things to say about my guitar playing, and I got all warm and fuzzy from it. That's pretty cool. So yeah, I don't have a bad thing to say about the guy based on my experience with him.
Yeah. So for me, I just put up a podcast where I talked about his incident and talked about, of course, this the discussion we're going to have about him. Early days of my show. So you're going back to the Something Wicked, This Way Comes, Dark Saga, Alive in Athens as well.
Stuff. Yeah, Alive in Athens. That's what I was talking about.
So I met him several times. He came to this. I'll never forget the first time I met the guy. It was right around about a year after I started my radio show, and I met him at this place in Lorain, Ohio, about 45 minutes west of Cleveland. It was a dump. It was called the Flying Machine, and it was crazy because it was Iced Earth, Jag Panzer, and Anvil of all bands, and I'll never forget. That's when I first met Jon. It's actually when I first met Mark from Jag Panzer, who's an outstanding guy too. And, it probably weren't a ton of people there, but, I sat down with Jon. I interviewed him in person. I actually, weirdly enough, I found that interview randomly on a random DAT tape that I had sitting out and realized it was him on there. But it was cool. And the first time I met him, I'll never forget, he gave me a Night of the Storm Rider long sleeve and a copy of the double CD version of Days of Purgatory, and thanked me for the support. He was really cool. I interviewed him numerous times over the course of the radio show. I think the last time I had ever actually talked to him was probably 2000. It was right before Incorruptible came out. So he came on my radio show for a little bit. And the guy was always really super nice to me. I do not know him personally at all, so I have no personal connection to this dude, other than the fact that I've had very good. I've always had a good experience with the guy. I've interviewed him in person a couple times when they came into the Cleveland area, but for the most part, my own personal experience with Jon was always pretty positive for the most part. I mean, there's not really anything bad I could say. The only thing that, I think there was one interview I did with him, and I think the person who might have interviewed him before me kind of made him mad. And I could tell in the beginning he was a little bit agitated, but he didn't take it out on me. But you can tell sometimes when you first talk to somebody, they may sound like that. But for the most part, the guy was always cool to me. I've had some people talk smack to me about him, but for the most part, almost everybody that I know who knows him doesn't really have anything bad to say about the guy. So that is kind of where I go for there. And there's one thing about Jon, though, that I did like, and it's the fact that he was always probably one of the most straightforward, not afraid to tell his opinion type of guys. You knew where you stood with the dude. Let's put it that way. That's the vibe I got. And bands and friends of mine that knew him said the exact same thing. Hansi from Blind Guardian used to tell me the exact same thing, who's one of his best friends. So again, I'm bringing that up and saying that in the beginning because it's going to go into when we start talking about the statement he made when, he obviously had, gotten sentenced and he put out through his lawyers. So We are going to talk about that. So let's go into the next portion of this. The incident that happened with him. So, from what I understand, we already know about the January 6th thing. We're not going to go into details of everybody like Ray Epps and the Kanon Shaman and all these other crazy people that were there, but let's talk about his specific situation. So obviously he was caught on video, waving his finger, allegedly had a can of bear spray in one hand. He was in the building. He wasn't in the building that long from what I've read. So he ended up, pleading guilty, pled down. He made a plea deal with them. He was in solitary confinement for quite a few months. I'd say 6 months, maybe 7. I don't remember what it was. He got out of jail and later in 2021 or 22, I believe. I think it's 2021. But and obviously he can't say anything because there's all the legalities going on. But so he was implicated in that. Now, at the time that this went on, I can tell you that probably over half the scene and almost every metal media outlet was like literally just wanting to burn this guy at the stake, figuratively, right? And I made one statement about it and I left it at that because I don't know what happened. I wait for investigations, factual information. I wait for all of this to come out, and I didn't want to say anything because he hadn't had a chance to make any kind of statement. So I don't want to start grilling or dragging this guy through the mud or, sticking up for him or doing whatever because we haven't heard from him. So now the climate has changed a little bit because when I post, here's the other odd thing, and this will go into later in the discussion. I was like one of the only people that posted about him getting pardoned. You didn't hear really any metal media outlet, nobody. I put it up there, and if you type it in Google, it goes right to my Facebook page for the show, which is odd. But when I posted about it, and I was looking at the comments, there were a lot of comments. Believe it or not, you have two sides. You have three sides in this. One side thinks he did nothing wrong, thinks that he shouldn't have had any jail time, and he just had his right to protest. The other side wants the guy thrown in the stockade and in solitary confinement and burned at the stake for the rest of his life, and they call him a Nazi and a white supremacist and all this other nonsense. And then, believe it or not, a clear majority of the people that are in there know that he realized the guy made a mistake, and even though they disagreed with it, I was actually shocked by this. They think he should get a second chance and they want another album. And when I looked back at the comment thread from 2020, a lot of those same people that were wanting to grill him or were sticking up for him were in that big majority that basically said he made a mistake and he deserves a second chance. However, obviously, and we'll discuss this more in the can he resurrect his career part, you had a lot of these people in the metal media outlets that were grilling the guy. So, I'll start with Justin. What do you think about the incident? How do you think, what's your evaluation of what happened? You obviously dealt with some hate because of your profile picture. You mentioned that. What do you think about the incident and him involved in his situation?
Yeah, this is the very first time I've ever discussed this. I don't think I made a post about it. I don't think I've taken a question about it. So yeah, here goes nothing. If he's guilty of anything, he's guilty of being a fucking idiot. Like, let's just put that on the table. The best way to not get swept up in all of this is to not be there in the first place. Me personally, I can understand that people were upset during that time. I think that we had been through a really long year. There's a lot of hypocrisy on the side of the people who are angry at him. This is not the first breach of a federal building. The White House was breached that year. Courthouses burned down. Other government buildings occupied. So this was not unique. It was unique in the sense that it was the certification of an election, but it's a lot of the people that are throwing stones at Jon turned a total blind eye to people doing very similar things because it was politically inconvenient for them to acknowledge those people's actions. As far as Jon himself goes, just knowing kind of some of his viewpoints and some of his political beliefs. The one thing that surprises me the most is that he didn't. You had said Ray Epps, so I mean, again, I don't want to recap the entire thing, but to me, and you can watch videos, you can see people yelling, "Fed, Fed, this guy is a Fed." You would have known that they would be crawling in that crowd, and it came out in the wash that a large amount of undercover federal agents were in the crowd, provocateurs, whatever you want to make of it. It seems to me that the guy took the cheese right off of the mousetrap, and he should have known better. So, yeah, I mean, again, if he's guilty of anything, I think he's guilty of being an idiot. I wouldn't have put myself in that position. He did. But he's also done his time. That guy has served more time for what amounts to essentially trespassing at this point than anybody probably ever in the history of trespassing. So,
yeah.
If there's a redemption arc, and I think that might be later in the discussion, but if there's a redemption arc for other people in the music industry that have done far more erroneous things than what Jon did, it's kind of hard for me to write him off forever, write his band off forever. I do think it's very irresponsible that he put his bandmates in that predicament.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that when you're in a band of this, the size of Iced Earth, that's your income. So not only did he cut his own income stream off, but he essentially cut the income of 4 other people off, which is, and their crew and whoever else involved in the band, cost the record label money, cost them their record deal. They're now dropped. They don't have a record deal. Yeah. So, I mean, I think sometimes you have to let cooler heads prevail. He didn't, but I don't think that being a hothead or walking into a trap or making one stupid decision, especially he didn't harm anybody. He didn't physically assault anybody. What he did amounts to being an idiot for, 35 minutes to an hour. I don't know. I wouldn't have done it, but the fact that he did it, I don't think it disqualifies this guy from earning a living, being a human being, being forgiven. And I know that there's a lot of people that are going to hate me just for saying that much.
Well, just so you know, everything that you brought up, if you look at the statement he put out through his lawyers, he acknowledges all of that.
Yeah, I read it.
So,
and I thought I thought he was pretty honest, and I thought he was pretty humble in what he said about it. And I think he definitely does acknowledge that he screwed up. And
yeah,
I think there's a lot of people who screw up that never acknowledge that they screwed up. So,
yeah. So before Christian goes, I'll give you guys my viewpoint on it. I agree with you. He made a very poor decision. I agree with you too that that he walked right into a trap, and knowing that he follows a lot of things that most people would call conspiracy theories. Jon is smart enough to know that when they don't have the National Guard there, right? When they say, "Oh, we don't need a National Guard," that was, to me personally, they wanted those people to go in there. Okay, yeah. That's my theory, right? And because if they had the National Guard there, number one, we have the United States of America has the best military, best law enforcement agencies, best intelligence agencies. If these people were really a true threat, they would have never even made it out of their house. Now, let's be real about this. So as far as what he did, here's the thing. Jon, you mentioned Jon having Iced Earth as income and being a pretty sizable band. You have your platform that you can express your political beliefs and spread your word through that. If you go to jail and you walk into the building now being occupied by the very people that have the opposite political views as you do, something is probably going to happen to you. It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter what his political views are. I'm just saying, if you do that as a matter of, argument, you're probably going to get in trouble for something. Now, I agree with you. He did more than did his time. I get it. But he put himself in that position, as you said, and he took accountability for it. If you look at the statement, the judge in the case acknowledged him and complimented him for taking responsibility for it. And I think that really says a lot about what he did. And so he lost his platform, because if you go to jail and you're silenced, you can't talk to anybody, right? You're on a gag order pretty much. So he lost the platform. You mentioned his bandmates. So and I agree with you about those guys also losing their income. But one of the other things that I brought up, and we'll bring up some of the consequences of it a little bit later, they were also put in this lose-lose situation, because what ends up happening And I can attest to you, when I went to the Blind Guardian page, some of the most vile things I think I've ever seen said about anybody. People were grilling every member of his band and Hansi from Blind Guardian that were more of the left-wing folks that were coming after them. We're going to cancel you and all this other stuff if you don't quit the bands you're in with Jon. So then, okay, so you're going to have those people come after you, but then when you quit the bands, all of Jon's supporters are now going to call you a backstabber, and they're going to start bashing you from the other end. So these guys, aside from losing income, it was a lose-lose situation for all, right? And he put those people in a bad position. Any of his business partners were put into a bad position, and any of his associates, his bandmates, his family, everything for that. Now, I understand you got a right to protest, but the problem is he let his emotions get the best of him. I mean, he's a human being. I agree with you. I think he deserves a second chance. The guy's a brilliant musician. He took accountability for his actions. The judge compliments him for taking accountability for his actions. So for me personally, let the guy back in. I mean, I don't understand. There's people that still cling to this. Not as many. I mean, believe it or not, there are far fewer people. I was expecting like a vitriol of hate when I posted that, and I did not see that. But again, over the last 4 years, and he mentions this in his statement, a lot of these metal media outlets were pretty much excoriating this guy in like you'd see headlines like, oh, Jon Schaffer ratted out his fellow traders, and, people calling him a terrorist and people calling him all this other nonsense that, look, the guy walked into a building, he made a stupid mistake at a protest. People broke into the Capitol when Kavanaugh was getting certified, and they got a slap on the wrist. So, for me personally, he acknowledged his mistake, and I think he deserves a second chance. That's just me.
Yeah, again, I mean, I would say, though, that, I think that what you're seeing, your news feed is probably somewhat similar to mine, and I know we have like an absolute metric ton of mutual friends on social media. So
yeah,
you're seeing the opinions and the thoughts of a lot of the same people I'm seeing. I don't think that's necessarily universal or representative of like the larger public as a whole. I do think there is still a very large percentage of people who still want him burned at the stake, still don't think he should come back. Mm-hmm. I had a guest on my podcast last week out of respect for my co-host. I won't say his name. He's a prominent guy on YouTube with a rather large following. And just the mention of Jon Schaffer's name, and I wasn't the one who said it, but the guy had an absolute meltdown. That guy's a terrorist. That guy's a white supremacist. All the usual. That guy's a Nazi. That guy was an insurrectionist. He tried to overthrow the government. This guy yells at me for about 3 minutes before leaving the chat, and the podcast is over. It'll never get published. But there are people that are still so. I don't want to use the word deranged, but they are. They're kind of deranged in the way that like they will. Despite what we've seen in the time since, the footage that's been released, the doors being held open, the people walking through the turnstiles and the velvet ropes, and no one died. That's all been debunked. No cops died. Despite everything we know now that we did not know when these people were so angry, they're still holding on to it. So I think that it's fair to say that there's still a lot of people who don't want him back.
Yeah, Christian, what do you think?
Well, there's a lot here. I'm probably going to, in one sense, take a bit of a more of a staunch position on. I don't disagree with anything either of you said. Justin, I agree with you that probably the thing that he's most guilty of is not thinking this through. But at the same time, I don't know him either. We've played together, but I don't really know him. But one of the things that his public persona has always suggested strongly is that he will stand up for everything he believes, and he's not shy about doing so. And I've got to admire him for that, even if I disagree with the actions that he allegedly took. I know about as much about it as you guys. I've read the same stuff. So I also agree that to have him, be imprisoned like that, and I'm going to speculate a bit here, just based on other things that I've heard. Some of the other J6ers have said, is that he probably took that plea deal to avoid staying in prison for 30 years. Or something along that line. Something far more severe was like, look, you've got two choices, and one of them isn't actually winning this and being exonerated and going home with a fine. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm betting, and of course I believe he still can't talk about that. Is that right? He can't.
I don't think he can
discuss the details. So that would stand to reason. But again, I really think that he has never been one to shy away from making it very well known what it is that he thinks and believes. And he's a very patriotic cat. You know, he did we lose Tony?
No, you're good. He's still here.
Okay, cool. So I also thought all the vitriol in the beginning towards him was a bit weird, but I have to wonder how much of that comes from people that didn't like him to begin with, and this just kind of added an exclamation point to how they already felt. Would be my that's my curiosity. You know, I don't know either way, but I find that as Tony calls it, I don't know if I refer to this way, but he refers to this as the metal community. To me, again, like with most large groups of people, there seems to be a small contingent of people with the biggest voices, the squeakiest wheels. So I don't know how many people that also have to hold these vitriolic points of view towards Jon,
right?
Really represent the you know what percentage of the greater community did it really represent? You know, I was kind of amazed when I saw him on TV, and I saw that I was going, well, and then it occurred to me, well, this is what he believes in.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm gonna, if I had the kind of gumption that he did on this kind of thing, perhaps I would have been there that day too. I don't think anybody predicted the way it was going to come out.
Yeah.
Justin, you had kind of said that, you know, perhaps he should have known something was up or foreseen that. Tony, I think you kind of alluded to that too. I don't know that if anybody that was motivated to go there outside of, I've listened to, do you guys see Enrique Torio's interview that he did a couple of days ago? First one he did since he was out, he did it on, I want to say it was PJ Media, but that's not right. Anyway, he was talking about, they knew what they were doing when they went there. Mm-hmm. And they are shit stirrers. This is what they do. They are disruptors. They are, you know, they're a pain in the ass. They're the antithesis to Antifa. And, but even they did not expect things to go into this direction. And so we can speculate all day too about whether or not the 28 FBI assets, and I think it's funny the way that they characterize them. If you listen to the words they use, these were not agents. They were associates. They were assets. They were contractors, if you will. So God knows what it is that they were. I mean, how many of these we can speculate again? Were these potentially some of the, you guys remember when Gretchen Whitmer, the governor, supposedly was kidnapped? And it was basically, it was associated with FBI assets. I wonder if these guys got busted and it's like, look, we'll put you out here on the ground for this and we'll take some of your time off or something along those lines. I'm sure you can see where I'm going with this. So to circle back around on all of this, I don't know that a man as smart as Jon either would out there be waving his flag and doing what he knows is right if he could have thought for one moment that it was going to collapse into something this ridiculous and be weaponized. I'm going to also say it out loud. I'm pretty damn sure that this whole incident, based on what I have seen and read, was weaponized against people who support Donald Trump, support the president in general, our current president in general, wanted to perhaps even from it cultivate some sort of public sentiment and support for the incoming administration and the Democrat Party in general. I don't know these things, but I think they're worthy of speculation and discussion on a certain level. And I'm not saying that I know those things as a fact. I don't. So, but again, does he deserve a career? Absolutely he does. And I think it's not going to be easy for him. But again, he's a smart businessman. He figured out how to get Iced Earth that far. He'll figure out how to get it that far again. And I think that we'll probably see, like you, Tony, you had mentioned how much support that he seems to be getting now. And again, I have to wonder if some of those voices are just voices from people who stayed quiet in the beginning because they didn't want to be associated with it. They didn't want to lose. Our culture is so bizarre right now. You know, it's very absolutist. You are either with us or you're against us. If you criticize Donald Trump, you're against Donald Trump. If you criticize the Democrats, you are a far right winger. These things are ridiculous. You know, everything, life is nuanced. Nothing is that simple. You know what I mean?
No.
So, and you know that I have been, I love it. I don't know about you, Justin, but I personally delight when people mistake me for a right winger because I am criticizing the left. And I love it when they mistake me for a left winger when I am criticizing Donald Trump, because it keeps them guessing. And it means to me that I'm sticking true to the principles that I have in terms of being a critical thinker. I don't have to blindly support anybody. We should be calling balls and strikes on the people who run this country, just like we would that anybody else that works for us. Yeah. So, and every president, every administration, every Congress is going to get stuff right, and they're going to get stuff wrong. And we can't say, well, see, he got that wrong, and then just keep a score of one or the other. We got to be honest with ourselves and keep score with both. That's the only way that the power that Jon, for example, felt like he was standing up against. It's much easier for that kind of power to run roughshod over all of us and get away with the kind of crap that they do if we are so absolutist in everything that we, it's, come on, man, it's divide and conquer. Very simple. This is a very loud Sun Tzu stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So one or two last thing here. I said that I wrote down a couple of things as you guys were talking. What was the...
Well, you just took the words right out of my mouth while you look at your notes. I mean, I have echoed those exact same sentiments. I don't know how many times. It is a very difficult time to be a rational person in this country right now. Mm-hmm. It's a very hard time to have an opinion about anything, because it doesn't matter if you take one side of it on any issue. You are now forever hated by the other side for that opinion, and it doesn't matter how many times you apologize or take sides over here. Everybody is so cult-like right now. It is so divided. It is, it's a very difficult time to be like a rational centrist right now.
Right. The one thing I will say is one of the things that people bring up, both left and even like, people that are like right-winged, is they talk about, Christian, you mentioned it, that, he sold out his, all the people that he was associated with. And, the thing is, I can guarantee you those people have never had to sit down at a table with someone from law enforcement telling you you're probably going to spend the rest of your life in jail, or you take a slap on the wrist and get probation. And, and these people will be critical, but I guarantee you those same people would be like, oh, yeah, I'll take the probation.
Yeah, and to put that in perspective, it's not like he's being interrogated by the local cops either.
No, exactly.
No, the scariest law enforcement branch that the world has ever seen.
Right,
was calling up his ass with a microscope.
With the full weight of the most powerful government the world has ever known. So I'm sure he was shitting his pants. I mean, it's hard to say what that guy went through. It's hard to know what they actually threatened him with. It's hard to know what he was actually up against, because I guarantee he's got some sort of a gag order. He's definitely got some sort of a stipulation in his plea agreement where he's probably not allowed to write a book about it, give an interview about it. I'm sure there's probably a lot of things in there that we'll never know what he truly went through. My guess. Yeah,
I think he's allowed to probably talk about it, because there was, I think Vlad TV did like this huge hour-long interview with the Canaan shaman, and he was allowed to talk about it. So, but everybody's different though.
I don't think that dude got the same kind of deal though. I think that dude just kind of like did his time or whatever.
He got released early for something. I can't remember exactly what it was. It was like 100 days early. Yeah. And I don't know if that's relevant to what it is we're talking about or not in terms of what kind of deal he got.
Yeah,
I don't know.
But he did go directly on to Tucker Carlson. In fact, didn't he run for Congress or something? I'm sure he did. And I said, look, man, and I was watching the interview with him going, if you wear that outfit when you're serving in Congress, I'll vote for you. Why not? Fetterman gets to wear his tracksuit. We need to send the shaman to Congress, shake things up a little bit, and bring them back down to reality around there.
I don't know if I want to applaud or cry every time I see that dude walk in his sweat shorts and his 5XL Everlast hoodie. It's like, in a way, I'm kind of like, all right, man, like, you're the everyman's man. You don't give a shit. Like, Yeah, that's
Yeah.
kind of punk rock and kind of cool, but I'm also just like, you fucking slob. Like, you are
Yeah,
getting paid
you
how
gotta
much
have
money?
some
Like,
reverence for the office, man.
yeah, man, stop by Men's Warehouse on your way to fucking work tomorrow. And yeah, don't show up looking like that again.
Yeah.
Big and tall stores.
So let me ask you guys this. You know, we've seen we've talked about a lot of this evidence that, you know, all the stuff that came out later on. Why do you guys feel, and whoever wants to go first can, why do you think people still hold on to this narrative that these people were really going to take over the government and that there was this huge insurrection? Why do people still hold on to that narrative? You know, because I see people, John's a terrorist. He tried to overthrow the government and stop the election and all this other stuff. Why are people still holding on to that?
I mean, the short, sweet answer to that is that politics are a religion. I mean, it's become the religion. I don't, those people's brains would break. I don't think most of them ever watched the footage because they didn't want to see it. I don't think those people could ever acknowledge that the thing that they have held so tight, that they have used to rationalize and justify their vitriol and their hate for the other side, if they were to actually look at it and see it for what it was, and this goes for people on the other side of the aisle too, for 100,000%. This is not exclusive to one side of the aisle, but if they were to actually have to acknowledge that and have their fragile worldview challenged, I think it would make them have to look in the mirror and accept the fact that they've, one, been wrong, and two, they've been played. And I don't think anybody likes to admit either of those things.
Yeah.
There's that, and there's also, you know, people tend to react differently to feeling powerless. And if they can grab on emotionally to something that makes them feel important and powerful, then they do. And as you said, it's more of, Tony, I've been calling it a religion forever.
Yeah.
You know, politics is basically the new religion because it doesn't require any sort of rational inputs to produce the outputs that you get from it, right? Mm-hmm. So I honestly think it really is that people also tend to feel safer in teams. So if they pick a team that they feel best represents what they believe, I think this is all basic human psychology and evolutionary psychology to say that we are tribal. You know, and we are going to, 10,000 years ago in our hunter-gatherer state, as it were, having new ideas could actually get you kicked out of the tribe. And if that happens, you don't eat. You don't, you don't have any safety or any comfort. And, no matter how much intellectualizing that we can do, and no matter how much advancements that we've made in thought and technology, comfort, government, justice, everything else, you can't just wash that out of us as humans. So I do understand it. The trick, and I know you know this about me too, is that I always say I don't need to be right. You know what I want out of the shit bait that I throw out there is to get people to actually think about why they think what they do. Mm-hmm. You know, even if it turns out that I'm wrong about it, I'm fine with that. Just please drop how you feel. How you feel is not useful. Mm-hmm. When it comes to analyzing situations like this or determining whether or not something is true. In fact, if you throw the way you feel in between you and discovering fact and truth, you're not going to come up with it all the time. You know, in fact, I'd say that it's an impediment. So I think that's really it, Tony, is that that's my own take on it anyway, is that people feel safer in their tribes. And they also, on some level, it's either intellectualized or it's not, that if they step outside of the comfort of that tribe with an idea that the rest of the tribe might not approve of, they might be shunned. They might be pushed out of what makes them feel comfortable and powerful. Yeah.
Well, you and I, Christian, we both have read probably every book written by Jonathan Haidt, right?
And I have, actually, yeah.
And, the thing is, in the way that I would explain it, is there's people, have their beliefs and convictions, and people have what we would call cognitive comfort, meaning that they're comfortable thinking something and they want to believe that. And if you give them any dissenting information that refutes that, then what ends up happening is they get angry and don't want to acknowledge that it's true. And then there's a bit, there's a thing called the human ego that refuses to be bruised because they don't want to be wrong about something. Right. And I think what happens is people allow themselves to be put into that category. So, for example, people will cling on to this incident, they'll say Trump incited it. Okay. Well, here's my take. I've always said this. It's the same thing goes for when people were trying to blame Bernie Sanders for some idiot going and blowing up a softball game.
Right. The guy who shot Steve Scalise.
People
I didn't blame Sanders for that.
No. People have free will to make their own conscious decisions to do something. And they don't have to listen to that individual. They don't have to listen to the media. They do not have to. Like, none of these people are like Trump didn't hold anybody hostage and tell them you go here or else, right? These people went on their own free will. And what they do is they make their own conscious decisions to believe whatever. And so I think what happens is when you show somebody dissenting evidence, I could tell you right now, I had somebody the other day, it had nothing to do with politics, but he decided that he was going to unfriend me because he claimed something was true. And then when I showed him it was not true, boom, unfriended. I got called an a-hole and I was unfriended. It was over a production number for a car. That's how stupid this was. Right. And he didn't want to be wrong. But the thing is, I mean, I was like, well, I go, if they did produce one of these, I would love to find it. But the production numbers say it wasn't produced. The dealer didn't offer it. And this guy went nuts, deleted his comment and left. And that's over something that's not political. That's over something just that petty.
That's tribal too, though, to a certain degree.
It is, yeah. But I was just curious why these people, what you guys thought about people holding on to this like narrative. So, I mean, we've covered the incident. Let's really cover it more in depth about like his band members, people in business associates, things like that. You guys are in bands, and it's like, I imagine, like, I mean, I don't know if anybody knows anybody that played with Jon, but imagine what it would be like if he had, what he did. Everybody associated with him, all these people wanted to throw them in that category. And I mean, that's a tough thing to deal with, man. I mean, these guys are like, they had to put up with a lot. And this business is not kind to things like this. I mean, people always looking to bring you down. When I say business, I'm talking about music business. What do you think it was like for those guys to deal with that? I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I'm going to touch on this briefly before we get into whether he could really successfully resurrect his career or not.
Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, I mean,
see what you think.
So I could see this from a couple points of view. As you had mentioned earlier, and you made a really good point that honestly it hadn't really crossed my mind, but when his band members quit, of course, there was endless amounts of pressure. Everybody wanted a quote from him. Everyone wanted an interview. Everyone wanted an answer. If we're just being honest, they wanted to hear them say the thing that made them feel good. Whether this side of the conversation wanted to hear him say like, "We stand by our guy. He was right. He didn't do anything wrong," or the other side wanted to hear him say like, "This guy's a full-blown idiot, and I won't be in a band with him anymore." Everyone just wanted to hear the thing they wanted to hear. So I understand that they had to pick sides. They had to do what was best for them. The thing that admittedly, I'm not like the world's biggest Iced Earth fan. I like them, but I couldn't tell you like everybody in the band's names. I don't know if those dudes are in other bands. And see, that's where it gets kind of hairy, because if me, for example, I'm an outspoken guy. I think that's no secret. But if I fuck up, it affects my band. But what about the guys in my band? If they stand by me, what does it do to their other bands? So, if you're the vocalist of Iced Earth, and again, you can stop me if I'm wrong. Those guys are in other bands, aren't they? Okay, so how could he look at the members of his other bands and say, "Sorry guys, like I'm getting canceled, so you're getting canceled along with me"? That's tough.
Yeah, definitely.
Again, I think some of this goes back to, it could be that Jon was not thinking about it, but I can't speculate on that. I don't know.
Right.
So, but there is no doubt that ripple effect. And that it can destroy careers by association, because again, our weird absolutist culture where there's just no room for forgiveness in anything or understanding. I just a few days ago, Tony, I don't know if it was something me and you were discussing on Facebook, but somebody brought up an actor that, is way outspoken and anti whatever. I mean, at this point,
it wasn't me.
Care. Probably not. It was part of the thread. Anyway, I had said, look, I really don't care what an artist's political proclivities are. I just don't, it doesn't mean anything to me. Are they a good artist? Do I enjoy their work? A great actor is a great actor, regardless of whether he's a socialist or a communist or a monarchist. It doesn't matter. Are they, some of them should probably, I think a good example is Robert De Niro. I think he went too far with some of it himself. And it's not a good look on him. But when I stopped watching the dude's films, he's a great actor. I like the work he does. I think he was kind of dumbass for saying the stuff that he did, and he's doubled down on it since. Who cares, though? Yeah. But at the same time, not everybody is so forgiving and sees it that way, and it can have terrible consequences just for the association. Yeah. The discussion that we're having right here, I'm used to getting all kinds of shit from people, so I really don't care. In fact, it's amusing at some point or another. It's like, really, let's have that conversation then, shall we? Yeah. I dare you to have that conversation with me.
Yeah, and let me speak about something that went on. So I mentioned briefly about some of that, with his band members. So when that happened, about like the next day or the day after, for those of you, and Justin, you may not know this, John had another band called Demons and Wizards, and the singer from Blind Guardian, which is a pretty prominent power metal band, Hansi Kirsch, is in that band with him. Probably the most known person that John created music with, believe it or not. So on their page, and Hansi's probably waking up like, what the hell happened? Like, he probably doesn't even know what's going on to begin with. And everybody, people were saying that, how could you make music with this guy? And the amount, I'm not going to really go into the comments. The comments were downright disgusting. They were absolutely disgusting. And it was pretty quiet. He didn't say anything at first because he doesn't know what's happening. Mind you, this is John's best friend for like 30 some years. Okay. I can tell you, Hansi is an extremely good dude, wonderful person. He came on my show a lot in the late 90s, early 2000s every now and then. And the guy's a really cool dude. He's definitely not some hardcore left or right winger, nothing like that. And people were just, Blind Guardian would post about something that they have going on, and then people would just fill the comments with some of the most hateful rhetoric I think I've ever seen. And finally, he just abruptly said, okay. He just said, I'm leaving Demons and Wizards. Didn't say anything else about it, and rightfully so, because, again, like any rational person, they're going to sit there and wait for the facts of this or the real story to come out. And then recently, probably a year ago, I'd like to say, or maybe 2 years ago, in an interview, he said he thinks John deserves a second chance. He came out and said it. I didn't really see a lot of hate or anger towards him for that. There was a little bit, but again, it goes into I think it was Blabbermouth that posted it, and you know how those comments go, right? And
my favorite.
Oh yeah, exactly. But believe it or not, there wasn't really that many hateful comments. The amount of hateful comments towards John had gone down quite a bit. And a lot of people were saying the guy deserves a second chance. You saw the people that want to still like bury this guy the rest of his life. But the bottom line is, he dealt with a lot of nonsense over it. I don't really follow the other guys in Iced Earth that much. Stu Block sings for like Annihilator now. But like I didn't really follow them, but I can tell you the comments directed at Hansi were absolutely disgusting. And they were absolutely ridiculous. And so he dealt with that. But again, three years later, came out and said the guy deserves a second chance, went out and publicly said it. Did not receive the hate that I thought that interview was going to receive for saying that. So it's kind of a long-winded way of kind of going through and telling you what they dealt with. So, and that's what.
Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't easy. We've had one episode in the history of Workhorse where someone in my band said something that was, it was a boneheaded thing to say, but it wasn't hateful. It was kind of taken out of context, whatever. I won't put him on blast. I won't even say what he said, but we did have one episode where like somebody took some screenshots and they ran to Metal Sucks with it because, that's the kind of, dirt sheet stuff they're going to publish. So, right. And luckily Curtis, our publicist, headed it off and we took care of it. But there was never a doubt in my mind that I was going to stand by my dude, and I wasn't going to throw him under the bus. And if that was going to cost me some fans, then that's fine. I think at a certain point in time, your integrity is worth something.
Right.
If you cower to the mob, what I have learned over the years is that if you apologize, that only makes it worse.
Boom.
If
Correct.
you look at, and I know this is getting outside of metal, but it's music and it's relevant. If you go to Jewel, the 90s singer Jewel.
Yeah.
If you go to her Instagram right now and you look at her most recent post where she's making the whole crocodile tear video, I'm so sorry, I hurt beautiful people, the whole, it absolutely just reeks of ass kissing and pandering. But the damage is already done. She's already pissed off the people she's pandering to. And now in the process, she's going to piss the other side off for apologizing and for going back on every. So now she's essentially just pissed off both sides, where she could have just shut up and it would have blown over. But I just feel like if you apologize, it's never enough, and that just gives them ammo to like rub your nose in it longer and harder. So yeah, I'm kind of in the boat of just shut up, quit digging the hole deeper, and let the chips fall. See how long it takes to blow over. I don't think apologizing has ever fixed one of these situations.
And that's exactly what his band members did. They just kind of were quiet, and that was it.
Yeah, that's the play. Really, it is. I
think the apology becomes the scarlet letter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like it is an admission of some sort of culpability of guilt when it isn't. It's more like it's supposed to be something that you do out of respect for a relationship. I don't have a relationship with all these people that say crappy things about me, so I don't care to apologize to them for something that might have upset their feelers. So I understand, though. I get Jon did issue an apology and an explanation, and I got to respect him for that, because he wasn't addressing the people that wanted to cancel him. He was addressing the fans that didn't understand what was going on. And so I felt that was that's a lot more authentic than going, oh, gee, I'm so sorry, I'll be contrite. I'm going to work on myself and do better. Who was that? He was a banjo player for, who was it? A few years ago for country band. And he dared to say on Instagram that he read Andy Ngo's book on Antifa. And he found it to be very good and he recommended it. They just blasted him to the point where they kicked him out of the band. This dude he started the band with them. It was his lifelong career, and they were like, no, you got to go. And he issues his apologies, and I don't know that he's been working since. I don't know that he is or isn't. Point being is that apology is really the scarlet letter. That's what burns you down.
Yeah, and in Jon's statement, if you look at the part where he said he apologizes to his fans, he said, for those of you that aren't fans anymore or don't like me, his whole attitude was kind of like, it is what it is. I noticed that you bringing that up, because I noticed that at the end of it, that was kind of the attitude that he kind of had, because he knows there's nothing he can do about it. So, he didn't disparage them for not following him. He just said, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a distinction to be made too between an apology where you are taking heat for something you didn't do, and a statement where you are explaining your actions and saying that you are, sincerely regretful for something you've done. I think that
contrite.
Yeah, exactly. Couldn't have said it better. Yeah, I mean, I don't fault Jon for putting that out. I think that if anything, it was very big of him. It was brave. And I do think that, like, if he's going to have a road to redemption, that had to happen at some point in time anyway. Whether it was right after or whether he waited 2 years and released it, he had to say that no matter what. Even if he didn't mean it, like, he had to say what he said.
Yeah. So let's get to the last part of this. Do you think this guy can have a music career again? You guys know the business. Do you guys think that this will blow over? Do you think he's still, because, he still has a decent following on Facebook and social media and stuff, Iced Earth does. He just reissued a bunch of albums on vinyl. Looks like he just put up there. And what do you think it's going to be like for him trying to get back into doing what he does best, which is create music and play music? And since he's been pardoned, that makes things probably a little easier for him to get back into doing this.
No, I don't think it does. I really don't think it matters.
I don't either.
I think him being pardoned is no different than in the eyes of the people who are angry at him. then like I don't think you're going to hire Hunter Biden to be your accountant next year. You know what I'm saying? Like it's the same shit on the other side of the aisle. Like that pardon, if anything, is going to infuriate people.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, the deal was already cut, and he really didn't need it. So, maybe it exonerates him, or it does something for a technical standpoint for his long term record.
I was talking like legally, like doing things legally.
Yeah, I mean, but here are the challenges I see that John's up against. He, for one, and just to put this out there, and one of the biggest challenges he's going to have is that Iced Earth's fan base is largely European. So, and I know that might almost sound like, oh, okay, well that's good, but it's not, because like your average centrist in America is like the far right radical fringe of Europe. I think our moderate Democrats are considered like right wing extremists in most of Europe. So, I guess he can tour Poland. I guess he's all right in like the far corners of Scotland, but I think for the most part he's going to have a real tough time there. If he does America, I can tell you for a fact, and I just know this from like going to their Spotify before and after the incident. There was a point in time where we were going to do an Iced Earth cover for like one of those metal injection things. So I went to their page quite regularly, and they were over 1 million monthly listeners on Spotify before the incident. And I checked today, and they're at like 230,000. So like they've only got 25% of the monthly listeners that they had before the incident. Mm-hmm. So if he is playing rooms, conventional logic tells you he's going to be playing for 1/4 of the people that he played for previously. I'm not saying that he can't do it. I think he's a prime candidate for like the Red State Rock tour. He can play the Rust Belt. He's probably going to do okay in the South. I think he's going to get the Hulk Hogan treatment if he goes into California. I don't think there's any sense in him trying to play New York. I don't think Europe's on the table anytime soon. So I think he can have a career. Now, if Tim Lambesis can get a record deal, I don't see why in the hell Jon Schaffer can't. I think he could probably go to Napalm. It seems like they'll take about anything. They're willing to fall on the sword. So maybe Napalm Records is his next move. I just think he's gonna have a tough time, man. Maybe he can link up with Kid Rock and fucking Jelly Roll, and
I was just doing the same exact thing, man.
Yeah. He's gonna have a new audience, but I think the toughest part is, in order for him to like own that audience, he has to go like all in on I believed in what I did, and I was a political prisoner, and blah 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 blah. And I don't think he wants to do that, because that kind of defeats the whole purpose in what he just said, what he just went through. I really don't know. I mean, I think he is gonna have to walk a fucking tightrope. He is going to have to kiss babies, shake hands with the right people, lay low, not do anything fucking dumb. And I think what's gonna happen, if I had to guess, this is my prediction, he's gonna rebuild his band. I mean, essentially the band is his songwriting. I mean, there's no secret there. He's gonna, whether some of the other guys come back or whether he gets a new group of guys, he's gonna very quietly, he's gonna negotiate a deal on the side someplace. Now, whether it's with a smaller label or, like I say, I think Napalm's probably a good move for him. He's going to record the music. No one's going to know anything about it, and they're just going to fucking drop a single. It's going to catch everyone off guard. It's going to be like that Poison the Well single that dropped today, and everybody's like, what the fuck? Who saw this coming? That's the move. And then you're going to get to gauge the climate. You're going to see if people listen. You're going to see what the reaction is. But I think if I'm him, I work on something, I get it done, I don't say a word to anybody about it, I drop it, and I gauge a reaction.
Yeah, explain the Tim Lambesis thing, just so in case anybody doesn't know what that is.
Yeah, I forget that who I'm talking to sometimes. Tim Lambesis, vocalist of As I Lay Dying, famously hired Hitman to kill his wife. You guy's a fucking idiot, and he was forgiven. He did his time. Everybody said, like, okay, this guy served his time. He went to prison. The hitman that he hired to kill his wife, for one, I think he was only paying like $2,000. It should have been the first red flag. So again, this guy's a fucking idiot that walked right into it. He gets some.
You get what you pay for, bro.
He hires a hitman off of Temu. But no, so this dumbass, but he goes and he does his time. So he gets out. Everybody says, look, this guy did his time. Still to this day, anytime there's a post about him or the band, of course, it's like the very first thing that comes up, and a lot of people are just like, no, we're done with it. But at the same time, like, As I Lay Dying has been headlining fucking huge rooms. They wrapped up a European tour. They did Asia this year. And then the guy fucks up again, and videos surfaced of him like 3 weeks ago where he is punching himself in the head, screaming at his girlfriend. I guess we're moving in the right direction. He's punching himself this time. He kicks his dog. No one's going to forgive him for that because he kicked a dog. So he's pretty well going to get the Mitt Romney treatment from here on out. He's fucked. But this guy's had like 3 chances, and yet still, in the time since this motherfucker has been out, he is. I'm pretty goddamn sure. You fact check me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I think that their comeback album, which I think was Shaped by Fire, that album was released on Nuclear Blast and then signed to Napalm. So if this guy who tried to have his wife and the mother of his children killed and admits to it, he never denied it. It kind of credit to him, I guess. He took his lumps, but like, if this guy can come back, why in the fuck can't a guy come back who, like a stupid asshole, walked into a building and yelled at some people?
I'm just a little bit of pushback. You played South America, I'm sure, right?
We've played Latin America. We've not gone into South America yet.
I would imagine that Iced Earth would be welcome at the biggest possible rooms with the largest number of people in Brazil, for example. I mean, they're completely, the metal fans down there, they're unlike any I've ever played for in the world. I would guess that Mexico would probably feel similarly about him. I'm not sure they would care about his politics or what he did here.
No, I don't think so either. I think Mexico would be good.
Colombia or Argentina, Chile. So he'd probably do very well bringing the show back on the road down there. And I would guess that he would have a similar sized audience. In fact, it might even be bigger because he's been gone for a while. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing. The other is that I have to wonder how much his legal defense cost him. Mid-market band, he probably did very well for himself, but was he a multi-millionaire? Probably not. Again, I don't really know what his finances are like. Mm-hmm. But I would wonder if he would self-finance and create his own record label and get some distribution, which might be a better option. He does have a recording studio at his ranch. I'm fairly certain that's where he recorded the majority of his work over the last decade or so. So, and I was going to say he should just hook up with Kid Rock. It would be a perfect, that would actually work. A Jelly Roll was a cool addition too. But I think, sure, I didn't really think about the European angle, though. You're right. The most centrist American is just like a crazy lunatic to many politically motivated Europeans. So you're probably right. And that was the big audience right there.
Yeah, that's your payday.
Considering that his a lot of his work centered around, on American history, American wars, 1812, the Civil War, etc. So it's an interesting way. Speculating on it's very interesting. Who knows? But I wish him Godspeed. Truly, I wasn't like you, Justin. I wasn't like a huge fan, but I liked the music, and it was very unique. He carved his own space out, as I had said before. So of course he deserves a comeback, of course. And I think we're going to find that the people that threw all the hatred at him really make up a smaller portion of the overall fan base than we might think. That's just, again, I'm just guessing, but I think it's probably safe to say.
Well, one of the things that I've always talked about, if you're going to be outspoken and if you're going to take a hard stance on anything, like you just absolutely have to own it. Yeah. I think that's if he comes out and tries to play fence walker, which I don't think's in his character, I don't think he would do that. But it's like what I call the Chick-fil-A effect. So like, obviously a lot of people, they're angry about Chick-fil-A's political stance, their religious point of view, whatever. But like, drive past any Chick-fil-A at noon and count the fucking cars in the drive-thru.
There's a line around the corner. It's weird.
Yeah,
it's a chicken sandwich place.
it is. So it's kind of like, if you want to think of it in this way, would you rather be loved and revered by 50% of the population with a hard line right down the middle, but you can completely own 50% of the demographic, or just have 100% of the demographic be completely indifferent, not give a shit that you're alive? So,
good point.
I think that like, if he plays his cards right, he's going to have to like address this whole snitching allegation, because I know that kind of rubbed some people on the right wrong. But I think that's an easy one for him to like talk his way out of, or just kind of ignore and sweep under the rug. But I do think that like 50% of the population in the U.S. anyway is going to view this guy as a hero, and that's 50% more than care about most bands.
Hey, John, you need a
cents
guitar
anyway.
player. I'd be happy to play for you, bro.
I would hate to. I have had to play guitar in front of him, but yeah, I would hate to put my right hand up against his. As good as my right hand is, that guy is a fucking machine.
Yeah, you're right. He's a monster, man.
He's phenomenal. Yeah.
So let me add a couple things in here with him. So during the 2020, when this whole pandemic nonsense happened, I was watching some interviews with Jon, with people that were trying to say he was wrong about his political views indirectly, and you would see Jon kind of speak over like it's a fact, this is what happens, right? And I think that because from the media standpoint, here's the interesting part about it, and I want you guys to think about this when you respond to me. I was probably one of the only people to post about him getting pardoned. Not one outlet. It's somebody. I had an interview earlier today. Before the interview, it came up. We talked about him briefly, and he's like, you were like the only person that really posted about it. If you Google search his name, you'll see a video that somebody put up on YouTube from like a friend of his, and then right away, my Facebook page post comes up. Normally, you'd see a post pop up from Blabbermouth or Loudwire or Metal Injection or one of these other outlets, but nothing was said. Now, the thing is, if this guy comes back, he's going to have to deal with a lot of these folks at these outlets that are going to interview him, that are going to, and I addressed this in an earlier podcast that I just posted. They're going to ask him loaded questions. They're going to do anything they can to get clicks, and to get clicks, most media outlets, no matter what they are, going all the way to Fox News and CNN and any of them, they will ask very loaded questions to try to get clicks, to bait him into saying something to try.
Yeah. I think that his publicist is gonna have to earn his money. He or she, whoever his publicist is, they're gonna have to do a pretty good job of vetting people. They're gonna have to pre-screen some interview questions probably from some of the more aggressive outlets. I think he's gonna probably do a handful of written interviews to test the water there. But they're gonna clip whatever he says and take it out of context, and I think he knows that. And I think he's just gonna have to be careful about what he says. He's gonna have to walk on eggshells a bit to not dump fuel on the fire, but I think Jon's a smart enough guy to navigate that. As far as the clickbaity stuff, the old saying, there's no such thing as bad publicity.
Mm-hmm.
There is. There is, but but it goes back to the 50% thing. So it's like, if metal sucks, just onslaught all day long. Jon Schaffer's this, Jon Schaffer's that. Well, you're still putting Jon Schaffer's name in front of everybody 10 times a day.
Right.
And you're still, all the people who disagree, all you're doing is like making them want to like the guy more. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it could also blow up in their face like they made us end up promoting the guy. It is almost kind of like a Donald Trump thing. They call him Teflon Don for a reason. I think it's very similar. The media shits on that guy all day. He gets like 97% unfavorable coverage from the media. But it's all publicity.
It's amazing.
As Gene Simmons would say, if nobody's talking about you good or bad, you are irrelevant.
Yeah,
that's a good point. I don't know if you guys know this. I was reading about the way pardons and such work a couple days ago, because of course everybody, social media, they like to say things that they think are true, even if they haven't checked to see if they are or not. The way, I don't know about you guys, but I don't like saying anything I haven't checked out, because I don't want to sound stupid like everybody else.
Right.
So I was reading about how pardons actually work, and I meant to bring this up earlier, is that they are an admission of guilt that comes along with it. Mm-hmm. So in terms of any sort of where he's going to go moving forward, he's essentially said that he is guilty of all of the things that he has been pardoned for. Now, I realize that he made a plea deal and pled guilty, but at the same time, you guys are talking about clickbait. You're talking about trying to corner him on certain things or whatever. So if I was, a smarmy, unethical journalist, I'd start with that. So now you're admitting that what you did was insurrection against the United States, right? stuff like that. And I think you're right, Justin. I think that if I were him, and if he wanted to take it the Trump route, Trump takes everything that, like with the, remember the garbage truck thing? People were blasting him about the garbage. So he gets a Trump garbage truck, which is just pretty masterful stuff. He should do something along those lines. Make a record about breaking out, about being arrested, about insurrection. Yeah, you're right. I'm owning it. And here's my new record all about it. Might actually be a great move. It might also be a career killer. But when you have Trump's kind of money, you can take those risks. But at the same time, I started the conversation with you guys by saying that he clearly stands up for what he believes in. He doesn't shy away from it. No. I would be amazed if he came out and didn't double down on what he thinks.
Yeah.
I respect him for it too.
I could see that. I think that, I'm already getting comments on the video I posted, which I kind of gave you guys a good idea of what I thought here. And I said most of that in that video. And again, I can see it going one of two ways. I think that the more that they blast him, the more the name's out there, it's out in the press. And not only that, but we already know how hard it is to get heard and seen in the music business. But if you have every media outlet blasting him, right, it's going to help him. Now, at the same time, I wanted you guys to keep in mind, nobody said anything about him. And there is a very distinct possibility that nobody will have anything to do with him, aside from maybe people like myself that would just let him come on and talk and tell his story. But some of these bigger outlets, either one of two reasons. One, they hate his political ideals, or they are afraid of dealing with a backlash for doing an interview with him. And there is always that possibility of that happening because, again, the interviews that I'm talking about were from people that clearly had the opposite political viewpoints he did.
I think that you're assuming that these people have journalistic integrity for one. I don't think they do. I think, quite honestly, I think that they'll quote fucking Satan himself if it'll give them two clicks and sell an ad space. So I don't really think that's going to be a problem for them. I just think that the reason they're probably quiet about it right now is that if you look at what's happened with people recently, you've seen all these lawsuits being settled for libel and for having facts slightly wrong. So, a second ago, Christian kind of went into like what the pardon actually means. And I guarantee you that with a profile that large, a case like that, they're going to have legal look over anything before they send it out the door. Mm-hmm. So I think that could possibly be a delay. I think that maybe some of these outlets, obviously, like, the dirt sheet, like, metal outlets, they don't have a lawyer sitting in the room with them. It's not like the Washington Post or something where they can just quickly send it over to legal 4 desks down and get it back by lunch. Right. So, it may not be worth the clicks to pay for legal to review things to keep them out of hot water. I think the shit slinging will probably start back up the second he resurfaces in the public and starts with a project. But I think right now, I don't know that it does them any good. I think that a lot of people right now, regardless of your political ideology, I think we have seen the pendulum swing back in the other direction. If you look at even, the viewpoints of Mark Zuckerberg and some other prominent people recently, I think they have acknowledged that like the cancel culture thing went too far, that the censorship went too far, that the dirt slinging and the hate and the vitriol and the, just turning on each other, just the ugliness of society, it all went too far. So, maybe just maybe somebody at some of these outlets grew a bit of a conscience, or they just don't want the backlash, or they realize that like their position is now unpopular. For the first time in 20 years, their position is unpopular. So I don't know if that weighs into it. Well,
if I may, you also had way higher profile people like Enrico Torrio, for example. You had the Proud Boys were given a blanket pardon. What was the other group? There was another militia type group that was actually indicted and prosecuted. I wish I could remember who it was off the top of my head. Very much like Proud Boys, and they were much higher profile. So that's what the press is talking about. So that it might just be a combination of the things that we've all brought up in terms of explaining that. So I think you've got Enrico Torrio. That guy was given 23 years and he wasn't even in the Capitol that day. He wasn't there. So it was seditious conspiracy, is what he was charged with. And in his interview, he was saying that they actually wanted to give him 30 years. And 30 years. To me, it's astonishing. And again, all of this is predicated on the idea that Donald Trump incited an insurrection. Well, nobody was charged with insurrection. Nobody was. Pretty hard to make that one stick. And also, I don't know about you two, and again, I fact check everything. So I literally went back and watched his entire speech that day. He said some crappy things. He said some things that, are ill-advised, and that's because that's what he does. But he also said, now walk down to the Capitol and peacefully and patriotically let them hear your voice. That isn't go down there and burn it down and break in. And as you pointed out earlier, Tony, people have free will. If what they heard in their heads was some sort of secret message that wasn't there for the rest of us, that's on them. That if that's what they were getting out of what he said, I didn't hear it. I wouldn't have gone, hey guys, hey Tony, let's go to the Capitol. Trump wants us to riot. That's just stupid. I don't know how anybody heard that.
Well, and the idiots that were rioting, they were already at the Capitol before Trump's speech anyway. I mean, most of them were already there.
That's true. They were already up against the barriers before the speech was even over. So they
they didn't even hear a word he said. So how he incited it? Yeah, I mean, he said a lot of stupid shit. And but the thing is, the questioning of an election is nothing new. I'm old enough to remember when George Bush won, and it was all because debold voting machines were not secure. And I mean, you work at cybersecurity, so I'm sure you remember.
They aren't.
I know they're not. We all know they're not. But you remember, like the dude, I can't remember what night show he went on, but he hacked a debold voting machine live and showed how he could go in and. But I mean, this has been screamed about every fucking election since I've been alive.
There was the incident in Ohio too when John Kerry was running against him. Same thing. Bush barely won Ohio, and there was all these questions about what was going on. And it was in the news for a year.
Yeah, they all do it. So I mean, I just think saying that Trump's look, Trump is a fucking idiot. Did I vote for the guy? Maybe, probably. I'm sure you guys can put it together. But he's not smart. He doesn't think before he speaks. He's an idiot, and his ego is the size of New York City, and he should have just taken his lump and moved on. I wouldn't have wanted to be president for the last 4 years. If we're being honest, it's probably the best thing that ever happened to him, that he didn't have to continue down the path of dealing with COVID, the crushed economy and everything. It's he came out smelling like roses, like Teflon Don, gets away with another one. But it was stupid. But he didn't say anything that hasn't been said. He literally just said peacefully, patriotically, let your voices be heard. Yep. How that translates to, overthrow the United States government. And to my last point on that, Jon Schaffer, this guy's a member of a militia. He is an avid Second Amendment supporter. He is a gun collector. I think he builds guns as a hobby. He does some gunsmithing because I think I talked to him about that. If this guy was going to overthrow the goddamn United States government, would he have at least taken a firearm with him? He was unarmed. Everybody in there was unarmed. That is the sorriest ass attempt at an insurrection in history, if you really want to call it that.
I am with you 100%. I've said it too. It's a bunch of guys in their pajamas, out there in their Hawaiian shirts and their MAGA hats are going to take on the might of the United States government and think they're going to win. There's a lot of dumb people there, but I don't know if any of them were dumb enough to believe that they could do that and that was what they set out to do. I think they were there to make a mess, to make a point, to raise awareness. That's no such thing as bad press kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Did they cause people to think? No. And that is really kind of another way we can speculate on this whole thing. We saw fortunately I have the benefit of sitting in this wonderful place where I own the company that I work for. And I'm constantly looking at screens, and I have a TV on all day. So I'm watching C-SPAN, and I'm watching the January 6th committee hearings, and I'm going, this is a farce. This is a show trial. It is a dog and pony show. I'm not saying that they didn't bring up some stuff that was very relevant. They did. And it was very surprising to me when I heard some of the actual information that was presented. But I kept thinking, why are they bothering with this? Is it all that important? Was there really? No, it was if I were, again, to speculate, if I was on the Democrat team, if I was Chuck Schumer, and I'd be looking at this going, we do not want people thinking that there's something going on here because it's going to cost us votes. It's going to cost us power. We need to protect our power. So we need to push back this way to put the same kind of show on, the same kind of demonstration in the reverse that these people tried. Because we don't want the American public questioning us. We don't want the American public going, why were they there? Was this really a thing we should be worried about? Did they have a point? Or so if we can just turn it into let's pick a villain. It's Donald Trump and his army. This is this group of Nazis and fascists, which that's a topic for a whole other conversation because it steals the actual meaning and the depth and the power of what those words mean. If we can convince them of that, we can hang on to our power for another 4 years, and that should also quash any further attempts to bring this kind of thing, make this kind of thing something that people would want to think about and potentially participate in.
Yeah, and I can't.
That's far-reaching. I'm speculating.
No, but I can't fault them for wanting to make an example of these people either. But I think that two things can be true at the same time. What those people did was wrong, like unequivocally wrong. It's no way to conduct yourself. It makes everybody who voted for that man look bad. And if you are going to claim that you're his biggest supporter and you're going to, go as far as show it up there to, whatever the hell they thought they were going to accomplish, like just know you made everybody look bad. You made the whole movement look bad. Everything that he fought for, that you fought for, you made it all look bad. So two things can be true at the same time. What they did was very, very stupid. And the second point is they should have been made an example out of, but not in the way that they were. I think that like there was probably an appropriate level of punishment. That level of punishment was not 3 years in a cell with no trial, with no pretrial, with no contact with the outside world for some of them. Yeah, so if you're going to say that you're defending the Constitution and the values of this country, everybody in this country is guaranteed the right to a speedy trial. They were denied that. People were treated as if they did not exist. Some of them were literally just thrown in holes and forgotten about. That is not how you make an example out of people. And I do understand, the political opposition's desire to make an example of them. You never want this to happen again. It should never happen again. It was very fucking stupid. Should never happen again. Unequivocally dumb. But I just think that like it was completely blown out of proportion for political gain, for political clout, like anything else. And look, let's be honest. If it happened that way on the other side, they would have done the same thing.
Same thing.
It's just opportunistic snake oil salesmen doing what they do best, and that's demonizing the other side for political points. So it's no surprise that they pounced on it. They would have been crazy not to pounce on it. Any strategist on the other side would have pounced on it. So again, you just shouldn't have been there. You guys shouldn't have been there. You shouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
I would also like to add, because all of that, you're right. This is a very important thing to recognize, is that, and this is what I've been saying too, because of course all the hand wringing and pearl clutching now is that Trump, the quote insurrectionist with his quote, Nazi army or whatever, now is running the country. And I like to assure people that are all upset about that don't worry. The con men, the rip-off artists, the liars that are much more skillful at conning you, lying to you, and ripping you off will be back in office soon enough, and you'll be all comfortable with them again.
On that note, I just want I do want to thank you guys for coming on. This was a lot of fun. We explored the depth of it. As I've said, I think the guy deserves a second chance. I think he made a poor decision, put a lot of people in a bad position. But he took responsibility for it. He acknowledged what he did was wrong. He acknowledged all the people that he did was wrong. That what he did was wrong. And I mean, that's all you can ask from somebody. I mean, that's really
John,
what it is.
Play music, brother.
So I mean, if he comes out with an album, I'll cover it here. I mean, again, bad decision, yes. But if I based what I listen to based on people's political views, I wouldn't listen to 3/4 of the bands that I listen to anyway, right? So, I mean, the bottom line is that I think the guy deserves a second chance. I think people should look at the fact that, and I'll close my portion of this off with this. People should look at the fact he took responsibility. Look at the fact that the judge acknowledged him and complimented him for doing so. And again, he didn't really have a choice to do a plea deal because, like he said, he thought he was going to spend the rest of his life in prison. And actually, I just got a comment on the YouTube video I posted about him where someone said that exact thing. So, again, I think he deserves a second chance. I hope he comes back. And, he seems to have learned his lesson, and hopefully other people can see that and say, you know what, that's probably not a good idea to go down and do what he did. And realistically, that's how I look at it. And I'll let you guys say your last words before we end it.
After you, sir.
I mean, I think we've pretty well said what needed to be said, but
yeah,
I do appreciate you having me on, and this is a conversation that I avoided for a long time, so I'm glad that we finally had it. And if people want to get pissed off at anything I said, then I guess send it to Metal Sucks and see if they run it.
Well, it's kind of like, again, I look at it as not a lot of people are talking about this whole situation. I think it needs to be talked about. Because the guy was a significant individual in the scene. And, like I said, it's nobody here is claiming this guy is like a massive terrorist, but we're not exonerating the guy for doing something dumb. I mean, he let himself, he had a can of bear mace and walked into a bear trap with it. Right. I mean, that's kind of, what I'm saying. So, but I enjoyed the guy's music, and honestly, I didn't really listen to his band, not because I don't want to, but I just really haven't thought of the band that much. And again, I don't really like to talk about anything at first until the actual facts of everything come out. I don't want to develop any kind of, I don't want to like develop, I wanted to wait till he made a statement. I wanted to see what would come out from this whole ridiculous nonsense that happened. And I wanted to see what exactly was going to transpire as far as what kind of information, what kind of video footage are we going to find, and I was willing to wait until my whole thing was I was waiting until he said something.
What a concept.
Yeah,
exactly. You've been waiting for information before you say something stupid.
Yeah,
no,
I wanted to.
Never heard of it. Yeah. Well, I mean, the other point I'd make is, like you said, if I had to agree with every musician in the world, then yeah, you can't. You don't know what. Half of your favorite musicians might totally agree with Jon Schaffer behind the scenes, and they'll never admit it publicly. I can tell you, I know a bunch of those guys.
Yeah, and that's a smart move too for some of them.
Oh, absolutely. Sometimes it's best just to be quiet. But
yep.
But the other part of that is, let's just look at some of the shit that some of these other guys have done that they've got. I mean, Vince Neil fucking drove drunk and killed a guy. No, is Motley Crue still out there fucking disappointing fans around the world? Absolutely, and they're making a ton of money doing it.
Yeah.
Elvis married a goddamn 14-year-old. He's still the king, right? So, I mean, I would never do that. I would never drive drunk. I would never fucking marry a 14-year-old. But you know what? God damn it. Kentucky Rain's a good song, and Motley Crue still sucks. I mean, I'm going to leave it at that.
God damn, I wish I could have said it better than that. There's no way I could. I'm supposed to follow that now. Again, and I wanted to thank you too, Tony, and to you too, Justin. It's genuinely a pleasure to meet you, and really good conversation, lots of fun. I think that there's a lot of people who also underestimate the capability, the intelligence of people who play hard rock and heavy metal music. And frankly, I've found that there's more people that are capable of thinking very clearly in this particular community than many others. So it's always a pleasure to talk about this kind of stuff with you guys. I really wish John Godspeed. I hope that and if he put out another record, I'd buy it. I'd want to listen to it and check it out. I like his dude, and I guarantee you that Justin, his tone. I've tried to copy that dude's tone. It's impossible. I don't know how he gets it, but man, his guitar tone is amazing. That's some seriously distinctive tone, dude.
The tone snobs would just tell you it's all in the hands, I guess. I don't know.
Oh, come on. Yeah. It's part of some of it, maybe the dynamics, but tone doesn't come. Tell me that fingers can translate information across electrical signals. They can't.
No, maybe we'll get Glenn Fricker to have us on, and we'll have that argument over there. But yeah,
and James Murphy, who is on the other side of it from him.
Oh yeah, yeah. He doesn't like me anyway. But
James?
Yeah, but yeah, it's been nice meeting you, and it's been a good conversation.
Well.
And Tony, again, man, thank you for putting this together for sure.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks a lot, and it was fun, man. And if you want to do this again anytime, let me know. You know how much I love good discussion. Dave.
Hey, everybody. Tony here from the Metal Command podcast. Again, I appreciate your support. Since 1998, I have hosted this show in one form or another, starting off in radio and now in the podcast format. Again, thanks for watching. And if you like what you see and hear on this show, by all means, please hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell to be notified anytime I do post a video. And if you see this program on any other form of social media, please give me a follow there. Again, I always appreciate your support.